It had been a long, exhausting day at the office, and as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I had been avoiding a conversation that I knew was inevitable. My mother's health had been declining rapidly over the past few months, and despite the doctor's best efforts, there was little hope left. She had been asking to see me, insisting that there was something important she needed to discuss. When I finally made it to her bedside that evening, the room was filled with the somber hum of machines and the faint scent of antiseptic. My mother, once a vibrant, energetic woman, looked frail and fragile. Her eyes, however, were as sharp and clear as ever. "Daniel, come closer," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. I pulled up a chair and took her hand, bracing myself for what would come. "I need you to promise me something," she said, her eyes searching mine. "When I'm gone, I want you to care for your sister, Emma. She's going to need you." I felt my heart tighten. My relationship with Emma had been strained for years. We had grown apart after a falling out that neither of us had ever mended. I resented her for what I saw as her reckless choices and irresponsible behavior. To me, she was still the spoiled little sister who never grew up. "I don't know if I can do that, Mom," I said, my voice hardening despite myself. "Emma needs to take care of herself. She's made her bed, and she has to lie in it." My mother's grip tightened, her eyes narrowing with a strength I hadn't seen in months. "She's your sister, Daniel. Family is family. Promise me you'll try." But I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to make a promise I knew I wouldn't keep. I shook my head, feeling a mixture of guilt and anger. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just can't." She looked at me for a long moment, her expression a mixture of disappointment and sadness. Then she let go of my hand, turning her gaze to the ceiling. "I just hope you realize what you're losing before it's too late," she whispered. Those were the last words she ever spoke to me. She passed away 2 days later, peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was a blur. I went through the motions, shook hands, accepted condolences, and tried to keep my emotions in check. Emma was there, of course, standing apart from the rest of us, looking lost and alone. I avoided her as best I could, the cat unwilling to face the confrontation that I knew was coming. It wasn't until after the funeral, when we were all gathered at my parents' house, that things finally came to a head. My aunt, a stern woman who had always acted as the family matriarch, called me into the kitchen. Her expression was grim, and I knew something was wrong. "What is it?" I asked, leaning against the counter. She handed me a letter, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Your mother wrote this before she died. She wanted me to give it to you, if things went the way they did." With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. My mother's handwriting, once so neat and precise, was shaky and uneven. "Dear Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you still haven't made peace with Emma. I know you're angry with her, and I know she's made mistakes. But holding on to that anger isn't going to help either of you. I want you to understand that Emma is struggling more than you know. She's made some bad choices, yes, but she needs her brother. She needs you, Daniel. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive her. You're all she has left now. Don't let your pride get in the way of family. I love you both so much. Love, Mom." I felt my throat tighten, and I blinked back tears. My mother's words cut through me like a knife, the weight of my stubbornness pressing down on my chest. I had let her down and refused her last request because of my bitterness. And now, she was gone. I looked up at my aunt, my voice trembling. "What am I supposed to do?" She sighed, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're supposed to be there for your sister. Your mother saw something in you, Daniel. Something good. Don't let her down." It was easier said than done. I spent the next few days wrestling with my emotions, trying to make sense of everything. It wasn't until a week later, when Emma showed up at my doorstep, that I realized what I had to do. She looked fragile, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own. For a moment, we just stood there, staring at each other, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "I don't know what to do," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I'm so lost without her." Something inside me softened, and I felt the walls I had built around myself start to crumble. I thought about my mother's letter, about her belief in me, and I knew I couldn't let her down. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "We need to talk." It wasn't easy. The wounds between us ran deep, and it took time to rebuild the trust we had lost. But slowly, bit by bit, we tried to find our way back to each other. I learned things about Emma I had never known, her struggles, her fears, the weight of expectations she had always felt but never voiced. In the end, my mother's dying wish became a gift, a second chance to repair what had been broken. I hadn't realized how much I needed my sister until I almost lost her, and I hadn't understood what it meant to be family until I nearly let it slip away. Now, as I look back, I'm grateful for the lesson my mother and family taught me. Love, forgiveness, and family are not things to be taken for granted. Sometimes it takes losing someone to truly understand what you have, and sometimes it takes opening your heart to find the strength to hold on.